My name is Francis Marino, and on the day I was supposed to marry the man I thought I loved, I instead discovered just how easily love can be used as a weapon, not with fists, but with expectations and entitlement. The wedding venue was perfect, set in Charleston, South Carolina, at a grand antebellum mansion with white columns and Spanish moss hanging from the trees. Fairy lights glowed like fireflies against the twilight sky, and white roses adorned every table. I had chosen every detail. I had paid $25,000 of my own hard-earned money to make it all beautiful, believing I was investing in a future. Our future. My dress was a custom design from Milan, hand-sewn lace with pearl embroidery along the sleeves. It fit like a second skin, tailored to every inch of me, not just in size but in spirit. I wore my hair in soft waves pinned with antique silver combs, and I walked into the garden ceremony feeling like a queen. If only I'd known I was stepping into a trap instead of a throne room. After the vows, after the smiles and the congratulations, as the guests drifted toward the bar and the band struck up some jazzy background music, Evelyn, my future mother-in-law, pulled me aside with the kind of smile women like her use to hide daggers. "Francis," she said, her hand resting on my arm like we were old friends, "before we go any further tonight, there's something we need to clarify. Now that you're joining our family, your $5,000 monthly salary, along with any bonuses or commissions, will of course be contributed to the household. It's how we do things. Keeps everything fair." I blinked. I thought it was a joke. A poorly timed joke, but one Evelyn might actually find amusing. "Excuse me?" I asked, laughing uneasily. "Is this serious?" She didn't answer me. Instead, Nathan appeared behind her, his eyes lacking any trace of amusement. He nodded, as if this had been a discussion they'd had before, perhaps even rehearsed.
He stepped beside his mother and folded his arms.
"It's tradition," he said, as if that word had the power to override basic decency. "Everyone contributes. That's what my mom meant. You work, so you pay. No secrets between husband and wife, right?" His voice was calm, clinical. And that's when I saw it. This wasn't last minute. This wasn't Evelyn going rogue. They had planned this. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my rage didn't know where else to go. "I pay for half this wedding," I said, cold now. "I covered the venue deposit, the flowers, the catering for your 40 relatives who couldn't even spell my name right. I've never asked you for a cent." Evelyn's smile tightened. "And that's very generous, darling. But now you'll be part of this family. We share everything. If you can't accept that, well, you may want to consider whether this union makes sense." My stomach flipped. I could feel it, not butterflies, but the burning sting of betrayal. I turned to Nathan, hoping for a shred of support, a flicker of hesitation. Anything. Instead, he shrugged. "Francis, this is how my parents have always done things. It's fair. You'll be taken care of." "Taken care of?" I repeated. "You mean owned?" His jaw twitched, but he didn't deny it. That was it. That was the moment. Everything I had suppressed, every time Evelyn made snide comments about modern women, with independent streaks, every time Nathan dodged financial conversations, every subtle power play, it all locked into place. I wasn't walking into a marriage. I was walking into a cage lined with roses. And I don't do cages. "Keep the venue," I said, my voice low, steady. "Keep the guests. Hell, keep the cake. I picked red velvet because you like it, Nathan, even though I hate it. Keep everything. But I'm keeping my dignity." Then I turned and walked out. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I walked slowly and deliberately, right down the candlelit path, past gasping guests and gossiping bridesmaids. The train of my Italian gown swept over gravel like a banner of war. Behind me, I heard Evelyn's voice rise. "Francis! Don't be ridiculous. You'll regret this." She had no idea. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I left them all in that fake fairy tale, Nathan, Evelyn, their sick little kingdom, and stepped into the cool night air of Charleston. Alone, yes, but not broken. I checked into a hotel downtown with my emergency card. The concierge didn't even blink when I walked in wearing a wedding dress. He offered me champagne. I took it. At 3 a.m., Evelyn called 8 times. I listened to her last voicemail. "Francis, please, this isn't how it was supposed to go." Nathan is devastated. It's just tradition. Come back. We can talk. I saved the voicemail. I'd need it later. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. They thought they were marrying into my money, my status, my future. What they didn't know was that I never put all my eggs in one basket. I had a backup apartment in New York City. I had my own accounts, investments, and a growing reputation in digital marketing. I was just offered a project for a luxury brand in Paris 2 days before the wedding. I hadn't answered. But now, I'd answer? And I'd make sure Evelyn and Nathan learned exactly what happens when you corner a woman like me. You don't get obedience. You don't get silence, you get war. I spent that first night alone in a Charleston hotel suite, lying flat on the bed in my still unzipped wedding dress, staring at the ceiling like it could offer some cosmic explanation for what had just happened. I didn't cry. That would have meant there was still a part of me mourning what I lost. But I hadn't lost anything. I had walked away from a man who sold me out before our first dance. By morning, Evelyn had left me 8 voicemails, each more frantic than the last. She started polite, then slid into guilt-tripping, then desperation. The last one clung to my nerves like static. Francis, please, we didn't mean to upset you. It was just ... tradition. Nathan is miserable. Please come back. Miserable? He hadn't even flinched when his mother demanded control over my income. He hadn't held my hand. He hadn't said a single word in my defense. No, the only thing Nathan had been committed to was his inheritance, their family money, their legacy. All things they were terrified I'd disrupt by being a woman with her own. I listened to the voicemail 3 times. Then I blocked Evelyn. I didn't check out of the hotel. I just walked out. I left the dress hanging in the closet like a body I no longer needed to wear, stepped into jeans, sunglasses, and a long black trench coat, and headed to the airport. I used my backup card, the one Nathan didn't know about, and booked a one-way ticket to New York City. You see, I've always had a backup plan. When you grow up the daughter of a broke, single mother who got screwed over by men too many times, you learn how to protect your exit. Mine was a rent-controlled apartment in Brooklyn, modest but fully paid for under my name. It was furnished with pieces I'd handpicked from flea markets and sales, nothing flashy, just solid and mine. No one knew I kept it, especially not Nathan. It became the war room. I sat down at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and began to document everything. Every subtle insult Evelyn ever slipped into conversations. Every passive-aggressive email. Every time Nathan brushed off financial talks with vague promises. I dug up texts where he referred to our money, conveniently after I got a raise. I wrote it all down in a clean, color-coded digital archive. This wasn't just therapy. It was evidence. I called Ava my lawyer. Not just any lawyer, the kind of woman who wore red lipstick to court and smiled like she was sharpening knives. I told her the whole story. She didn't say, "Oh, I'm sorry." She said, "Let's make them bleed." We started with the wedding invoices. I sent Nathan an itemized bill for his half of the costs, $12,500. I knew he wouldn't pay it. That wasn't the point. The point was control. The point was showing him that I wouldn't disappear quietly like some discarded first wife. But that was only the beginning. I leaked the voicemail, not to the press, not yet. I uploaded it, anonymously, to a private online group one had joined years ago for women in high-powered careers who dealt with domestic financial manipulation. It spread like fire. Women from all over the country messaged me, some horrified, some grateful, others enraged on my behalf. One of them was a content editor for a feminist media brand based in Chicago. "Do you want to tell your story?" she asked. Anonymous or in full? I thought about it for 5 seconds. Then I said, "Let's burn the house down." We didn't use names, but the story was unmistakably mine. The bride who walked out because her salary was the dowry, that was the headline. It hit 300,000 shares in 2 days. I know for a fact Evelyn read it because she sent a letter, handwritten, to my lawyer's office. "You're destroying our reputation. You've misunderstood everything. Nathan is being ridiculed. We can't go out in public. Poor things." In the meantime, I filed for a refund from the vendors I'd paid. Some refused. Others, moved by the story, reimbursed portions. The Charleston florist returned $2,000, telling me her own daughter had gone through something similar. I took that money and booked a ticket to France. Yes, France. You see, before the wedding, I had been in talks with a fashion tech firm in Paris. They wanted someone to revamp their brand identity and build a platform for luxury digital storytelling. At the time, I was going to turn it down to start a life with Nathan. Now, I was going to build my empire. In Paris, I didn't just work, I thrived. My salary nearly doubled to $120,000 a year with quarterly bonuses. I rented a top-floor apartment in the 11th arrondissement, filled with light and stone balconies overlooking cafes. I took French lessons. I went to gallery openings. I relearned how to enjoy the sound of my own name. And then I did something even more dangerous. I went public, fully, face, name, photos, the whole truth. A global women's magazine flew me to London for a cover shoot. Why she walked out and took her power with her, that was the caption under my name. When the story dropped, the fallout in Charleston was nuclear. Nathan lost 2 corporate deals. Evelyn's family business, a chain of boutique bed and breakfasts, was buried under 1-star reviews. Feminist bloggers dissected their greed. Financial abuse helplines started referencing my case in webinars. They tried to play tradition. I played justice, and I wasn't done. Because the next phase wasn't just about punishing them. It was about making sure women everywhere knew they never had to beg to keep what was already theirs. That silence they wanted from me. I turned it into a megaphone. And I spoke until the entire world listened. Revenge, I've learned, is not about rage. It's not the screaming. It's not throwing glasses or crying into pillows or driving past their house in the middle of the night. Revenge is patience sharpened into precision. It's chess, not fire. And I have always played the long game better than anyone gave me credit for. When I arrived in Paris, I didn't come as a woman licking her wounds. I came to rebuild in silence, far from the rot that had tried to consume me. My mentor, Elodie, offered me more than a position. She gave me a stage, and more importantly, she gave me freedom. I became creative. Director at a rising digital media company focused on telling untold stories of powerful women across the world. My salary jumped to $120,000, plus bonuses. I was given a penthouse apartment in Le Marais, a budget, and a team that listened when I spoke, unlike the man who once dared to call himself my partner. But I didn't just build campaigns and logos in Paris. No, I built a war machine. The silence I had kept during my engagement became a strategy. The voicemails, emails, and texts I had saved, every attempt Evelyn made to control my income, every slimy comment Nathan sent afterward, were no longer personal wounds. They were ammunition. I created an online column under a pseudonym, Femme Noire, short for Francis Marino, but no one knew that yet. I published real stories from women like me, women who'd been forced to give up jobs, salaries, independence. Women who were told marriage meant submission. Each story sparked thousands of reactions. Then one day I told mine. Still anonymous, still cloaked in shadows, but the story was unmistakable. The comments exploded. This is my sister. This is my mother. This was almost me. A production studio in Marseille contacted me for the rights. An agent in London wanted to turn it into a book. I said no, not yet. Because I wasn't done gathering power. What Nathan and Evelyn didn't understand was that I never stopped watching them. Their business, a chain of boutique hotels in Savannah, Georgia and Miami, Florida, depended on image. They marketed themselves as family-owned, ethically run women first. The hypocrisy made my skin crawl. So I targeted them the only way that mattered, public exposure. Using a shell account, I started submitting reviews on behalf of former employees and vendors. Honest ones. Backed with the invoices, the texts, the canceled wedding receipts I still had in PDF form. I painted the picture they had tried to keep hidden, of a greedy, classist matriarch who demanded dowries in modern-day disguise. Within weeks, their Google rating dropped. Within a month, Evelyn was forced to lock her Instagram account. Her weekly legacy family posts started drying up. But still, I didn't reveal my name, because I wanted them to suffer in confusion. I wanted them to feel the paranoia of being hunted in public, but never seeing the bullet coming. I received a cease and desist letter from Nathan's lawyer, poorly written and empty. They had no proof, no names, just desperation wrapped in legalese. I framed it. Then I started recording podcasts, this time under my real name. I remember sitting in the studio in Paris, microphone lit, red recording sign blinking above the door. I leaned in and said, "They told me my salary would belong to them. That if I didn't give my earnings to my husband's family, the wedding was off. So I walked out. And I made more money without them than they ever would have made off me." And just like that, Francis Marino was reborn. The clip went viral within hours. I woke up to 50,000 new followers. My inbox was flooded with stories, job offers, media interviews. I was invited to speak at panels in London, New York, Los Angeles. My name was no longer whispered in pity, it was spoken with respect. And then, finally, I dropped the bomb. An exclusive article on a major women's magazine in the US. The Price of Their Pride, by Francis Marino. I named names: Evelyn Marino, Nathan Clark. I included quotes, timestamps, actual voice memos, screenshots of the demand for my salary. I outlined how Nathan stood silently while his mother leveraged my career as a bargaining chip. I published my canceled wedding invoice, my unpaid bills, and every dollar I spent walking away with my head held high. There was no lawsuit that could touch me. Everything I shared was fact, documented and dated. I had warned them, but they were too arrogant to listen. The fallout was swift and brutal. Major wedding forums banned Evelyn's event planning referrals. Their Savannah location lost its partnership with a national hotel association. One of their Miami investors pulled out. A former employee sued them for discriminatory practices and used my article in her court filings. Their legacy, the thing they worshipped, was turning to ash. And still, I didn't feel finished. Because revenge isn't just about ending someone. It's about reclaiming everything they tried to take. And so I returned to America. Draped in a designer coat paid for by a French bonus check. Diamond earrings bought by myself, for myself. I flew first class into Chicago, where I was the keynote speaker at the Women's Financial Power Summit. Backstage, as the lights dimmed and the music swelled, I stood behind the curtain and whispered to myself, "This is what they tried to silence." I walked on stage to thunderous applause, chin high, heels steady. I wasn't the girl in the wedding dress anymore. I was the woman who burned the altar to build a throne. And soon, Evelyn and Nathan would find out. I wasn't done. Not yet, because the final chapter would be personal. When I landed back in America, it wasn't for love, reconciliation, or nostalgia. It was for the stage. Chicago, cold and steel-boned, met me with wind that bit like honesty, sharp and unrelenting. And that suited me just fine. I wasn't here to be soft. I was here to be heard. The Women's Financial Power Summit was being hosted at the Langham Hotel, one of those skyscraping towers with gold-tinted elevators and minimalist walls that scream quiet wealth. I arrived in a crimson power suit tailored by a designer in Paris who had once dressed French ministers. The fabric hugged my frame like it knew the weight I carried. On my ears were the diamond studs I'd bought myself with the bonus from my first campaign in France, a small, sharp reminder that I didn't need permission to shine. Backstage, women whispered my name like it carried voltage. "Is that Francis Marino? The one who walked out of her wedding and built that media empire? She exposed that Southern hotel family, didn't she?" Damn right, I did. When they announced me, I walked to the podium with my heels echoing on the marble floor like gunfire. No smiles, just purpose. "My name is Francis Marino," I began, staring out at the sea of eager eyes and burning hearts. A year ago, I was a bride. Now I'm a brand. And everything they tried to take from me, my voice, my income, my identity, became the fire that lit my rise. Applause, not the polite kind, the kind that punches walls. I owned that room. Afterward, there was a reception. Wine, soft music, and networking buzz. I wasn't hungry. I was high on the electricity of it all. The victory, the revenge, the proof that I was no longer just a woman who said no. I was the woman who thrived after no. Then I saw him, Nathan. He stood across the room, like a roach in a room full of chandeliers. Same jawline. Same haircut, but something about him looked thinner, older. The arrogance had melted into something gray and pathetic. He wore a suit that didn't fit right, probably the same one from our almost wedding day.
He walked toward me like a man approaching a grave. "Francis," he said, voice low, unsure.
I sipped my champagne, then set it down. "Nathan."
He hesitated. "You look different." "No," I replied.
"You just finally see me." He swallowed hard. "I just came to say, I'm sorry for what happened, for everything." I laughed. "Not the kind you share with a friend, the kind that cuts." "You're not sorry for what happened," I said. "You're sorry it didn't work." He flinched, but I kept going. "You're sorry that I walked out, that I didn't fold. You're sorry that instead of crawling back, I turned your entire family legacy into a national embarrassment." That wasn't my intention. I leaned in, close enough that he could see the ice in my eyes. "Your intention was to break me before the marriage even began. To trap me into funding your family's failing business while Evelyn played queen with my income. You didn't miscalculate, Nathan. You just chose the wrong woman." He looked down. And I felt nothing, not love, not pain. Just pure, focused satisfaction. "Do you think we could ever, I don't know, talk? Privately?" he asked. I smiled then, a slow curve of my lips like the unsheathing of a knife. "We already have, Nathan. Publicly, in articles. On podcasts, in keynote speeches." "You've been very silent in that conversation," he sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's all ruined, Francis. Mom won't leave the house. She says she sees your name in her nightmares. She's humiliated." "Good." I leaned back, folding my arms. "Evelyn's humiliation is just interest. I haven't even touched the principal yet." "Jesus, Francis," he muttered. "How can you be so cold?" "Cold?" I laughed again, stepping in closer. "I'm not cold. I'm controlled. There's a difference. And believe me, if I'd been colder sooner, I might have avoided meeting men like you in the first place." He stood there for a long moment. Then he just nodded, defeated. He walked away like a man exiting a war zone, limping though there were no visible wounds. I watched him go. I didn't call out. I didn't apologize. I didn't forgive. Because revenge isn't about forgiveness. It's about liberation. That night, I returned to my suite on the 17th floor. City lights stretched below like a glowing map of every woman I'd fought for. Every one of us told to quiet down, compromise, hand over our power in exchange for someone else's approval. I stood at the window, fingers resting on the glass, heart steady. The wind howled outside, but inside, I was calm. I thought about the girl in the wedding dress, standing beside Evelyn, hearing her own worth reduced to a line item on a balance sheet. And I thought about the woman I'd become, the one who took that moment and lit a fire so hot they couldn't put it out. I had lost a man, I had lost a wedding, but I had gained a warpath lined with purpose. I found my voice. I built my power. And I don't come cheap anymore.